Game over, man. Game over.
Johnny.
You're gonna need a big approach.
Why so serious?
Roll out.
I am Iron Man.
This is a tasty burger.
Welcome to the In Session Film Podcast.
Welcome to this podcast review episode for April 17th, 2023. I am Brendan Cassidy.
And I'm Ryan McQuaid.
Thanks for joining us this week, everyone, for what is sure to be a very biting episode of In Session
Look
Film.
at you.
I'm trying, man. We're trying to be a little funny when we can here. Anyway, Ryan, thanks for joining me for this literally biting episode. We'll get into that in just a little bit. How we doing, my man?
I'm doing great, man. I'm here to sink my teeth into
There
this
it is.
review, and gonna let the juices flow. I don't know. I was a blood reference. It's gonna get messy up in here. You might want to lay a
I'm losing
down or
count.
something.
I'm losing count how many times you can be a little bit funny.
Oh,
here.
look at you! Look at you!
I think I'm done. We're officially making Dracula puns here, as you couldn't tell. Or I'm sure you could tell, honestly. Our listeners are really smart. They know what we're talking about, what we're referring to here. There was a Dracula-themed movie that came out over the weekend. It was called Renfield. I'm guessing you may have seen some other exorcism movie over Renfield, just given the box office results that we were just talking about offline, Ryan. It's pretty insane how the Pope's Exorcist basically is destroyed the right word when compared to how much it favored in comparison to Renfield.
Listen, we all know that Dracula's nemesis is the Catholic Church. And so it only makes sense that Dracula gets beat at the box office by the Pope's Exorcist. Like, that just makes sense. And I don't think even old boy Drac can get really mad at that, because it's got Russell Crowe on an exorcist mobile. Like, if that's not what we all want in a movie, I don't know what is. So
it would have been so much funnier if Russell Crowe was actually playing Dracula in that so-called dark universe as opposed to Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
it would, I'm telling you, it's like we said on the main show, that is the most infamous photo in film history, probably. And at least in the modern era. And it's a big old what if. Like, Disney, I know you've got that show for Marvel, What If. I'd like to see you put your money where your mouth is and what if that whole franchise right now. Come on. Do it.
We talked a lot about that infamous photo, the Dark Universe photo, on the main show, episode 530, which is now available as we're recording this. You should go and check that out. It was myself, Ryan, and Jay Ledbetter having essentially a 90-minute conversation on one Russell Crowe. His career has been odd, to say the least. And speaking of an actor's career who has been
Hell yeah.
certainly a little cagey over the years, we'll say. I had room for one more pun. It wasn't Dracula themed, but I found some way to sneak that in. The movie Renfield, which stars one Nicholas Cage, and apparently this was one of his 3 roles that he was most excited to play, or that he most wanted to play in his life. I forget what the other 2 are, but Count
He wants
Dracula.
to play Captain
Superman was another one, if I'm not mistaken.
Superman, and when I talked to him 2 years ago for Pig, he told me he always wanted to play Captain Nemo in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Yes. I would
honestly
pay to see that.
Cannot wait. I would pay to see that. David Fincher's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, starring Nicolas Cage. Let's do it. Come on. Somebody's got the money to do it.
You don't even need a pitch. You don't even need a pitch for that. You just write that on a piece of paper, send it into every movie studio. I can't think of anyone that would not greenlight that.
Yeah, and all they have to do is write it, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and where the 2 would be, put a dollar sign. You know what I mean? And I think that would work. Yeah.
You're channeling your inner James Cameron marketing brain.
Just saying, it worked out for
man.
It all worked out for Big Jim. You know,
it did. It did. Aliens, and I still think that's his best movie. Anyway, that is not what we're here to talk about. We are talking about Renfield. Sure. So let's go ahead and transition into this little movie. I guess it is a little movie, considering how it didn't fare too well at the box office when compared to other films that came out this same weekend. But Renfield was directed by Chris McKay. It, of course, stars Nicolas Cage alongside another Nicholas, that being Nicholas Hoult. The film also features Awkwafina and Ben Schwartz. And it is about Count Dracula, but more specifically, it's about Renfield, Dracula's henchman and inmate at a lunatic asylum for decades. That's what it says on IMDb here. Now, Renfield longs for a life away from the Count. He's battling various demands from the Count. It's basically what Nicholas Cage has described on a few talk shows as Dracula as this codependent narcissist is basically the way it's described. And that's a pitch. We were sort of joking about how great a pitch would be of David Fincher directing Nick Cage in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, but Dracula as a narcissistic codependent leader is also just as much of an intriguing premise. And I was really looking forward to this film, just given Nick Cage's Cage-isms, his abilities as an actor, the fact that you never know what you're going to get. And I think this premise sounded really intriguing. So with that said, Ryan, what did you think about Renfield? And we can conclude this episode right here.
This movie, no pun intended, kind of sucks. And the reason why, it's not even necessarily the product we got. It's the fact that this movie could have been so much more, and you kind of even see it within itself. So obviously it's a really interesting premise. You have this sort of Renfield and Dracula in the modern day, right? Which is an interesting thing enough. From all indications in the trailer, it was going to be really a lot of Holt and Cage, who I believe it's a reunion from The Weatherman. Remember The Weatherman?
Oh yeah, you're right. You're right.
Gore Verbinski's The Weatherman.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, man.
And
really young Nicholas Holt in that one.
Very young. And so this is the first time they made a movie together in a long, long time. So there's that kind of they've got chemistry built in, Brendan. Then you've got
they have a history.
You got Awkwafina in the cast. You got Ben Schwartz. You know, you've got some serious comedic chops behind some of these actors that are around it.
Yep.
And I started thinking, okay, it'll be like a comedy. Maybe it'll be like essentially like taking on all of Dracula's lore. You know what I mean? The various iterations, like having Cage go through different times and maybe even different cinematic. Dracula's would be a lot interesting because we
do kind of get that for at least a moment in the beginning.
We get a very, very brief moment of that. And in that moment,
basically
I thought
a reenactment, or at least a few reenactments, a few scenes here and there of the 1931 Dracula, if I'm not mistaken.
Exactly. And I thought there, in that moment, oh, they're going to do that.
Yeah.
And then that like 30 seconds ends and the rest of the 90-minute movie continues. And it is really one of just the more, I think, very lazy sort of action-y comedy horror movies that we've had in quite some time. I think the action's repetitive, unnecessary. I don't care about movie violence. There's a couple of good kills in there, but it's really just kind of the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
Set piece after set piece that feels very uninspired. Backstory for characters that are really like not earned. A lot of the acting in here is very poor.
Yeah.
Including Awkwafina, who is an actress that I think, like in something
I love
Farewell,
Awkwafina normally. Yeah.
She can be great, but in this movie, she's awful. She's bad. I'm sorry. I that's how I feel. Nicholas Holt feels like he's in his own movie, which is fine.
Yeah.
And he's kind of doing like similar things I've seen him do before. There's not any groundbreaking things going on with him. The only one that really, I think, understood the assignment was Nicholas Cage. And I know that you and I are going to differ on this a little bit.
Maybe a little bit, but we'll talk about it.
I think that Cage is the perfect kind of unhingedness for a Dracula. And he's perfect. This is kind of a role perfect for Nicolas Cage. Is the material the best material they could give him? No. Does he elevate it? I think he does. And I think he's the only one that understands that, like, this is supposed to be kind of campy fun.
Yeah.
and the rest of the movie is not fun. The rest of the movie is like this crime, comedy, actiony sort of case, like completely like if you just took all those other elements out and just made it a Renfield Dracula movie like we all thought this was going to be, that would have been a much more interesting movie. They add all these unnecessary things to it, and then it kind of dilutes as much as Cage does do a good job and is really funny, I think.
Sure.
He's still barely in this movie. It is mostly about Nicholas Holt's Renfield stuff, and that
Right.
storyline just was not well written at all. So overall, this is one of the more disappointing films, not just this year, but in like the last couple of years, because I knew about this. We've known about this project for a while. I
Yeah,
was
we
able to
have.
speak with Cage during the junkets for Pig back in 2021, and he was so excited to do this movie. We were all kind of
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
we're all like, it was even before Massive Talent, which I thought that movie was a lot of fun last year. But that movie
yeah.
understood what
Sure.
it was trying to be, wasn't trying to take itself serious. You know what I mean? That movie is a hell of a lot better than what this movie is. And it's just a real damn shame because because he does not repeat playing the same character. He does not like to do that a lot.
No, you're right.
And so we're probably never going to see what would have been a golden opportunity to have Nicolas Cage play Dracula. It gets absolutely squandered in a nothing burger of a movie. And we will forget about this movie in about 2 weeks when it's on VOD and out of the theaters, because this movie absolutely tainted the box office. This movie is what, Brendan, $65 million was what the budget was, I
Something
believe.
like that. Yeah.
This movie looks awful. The shine of a straight to streaming movie is all over the cinematography of this movie. The editing makes a lot of the action sequences, incoherent, and just overall, just like a really depressing Ryan McQuaid walking out of the screening of this movie. And like, my wife is right there, and I usually like to take my wife to good movies, and I feel
Yeah.
like I failed her this week.
And,
So
and you feel like
it
you have
was,
to own up some of the guilt there for a
yeah,
little
I
bit.
needed to go buy her something afterwards. I dropped the ball on this one.
Yeah,
Like, this
yeah.
was actually, I didn't. Universal did, but that's
Universal
besides the
did.
point,
Yeah.
you know.
This had nothing to do with you,
But
man.
that being said, I will say this, and then I'll kick it over to you, Brendan. This is not a career killer. And I think that's at least we could say that right up at the front. Just
Oh,
nobody's
man.
career is getting killed from this movie. It's not
20
0 out of 10, but
2023 is going to be the year of career killers. I'll tell you that.
I'm gonna be making that joke a lot this year.
Oh
So
man,
just
it's so sad that
buckle
we
up.
have. It's so sad we have to be making that joke. Honestly, this feels kind of like a movie that was something that started as some type of like comedic police thriller of sorts that then got morphed
Yeah.
into
A Dracula
a
movie.
Count Dracula movie, which I mean could have been a pretty interesting idea. Sometimes the funniest things that you see in a movie when you have these two opposing ideas that should not fuse and yet somehow they can. We've seen it before in other films, but this I think definitely has a very jarring quality between both of those extremes. And this is going to be one of those hard movies to review. We always get movies every year, a few at least, where the common response is you're just supposed to have fun. You're just supposed to have fun.
No.
And
No.
I mean,
don't agree with that.
I don't necessarily agree with that either, but then it's also a matter of taste because we all look for fun in different ways. We all find different things amusing and entertaining. And I think in the case of Renfield, I wanted to have fun during this movie. I really did. And I think it really just comes down to what you're talking about. It's a movie that I don't think fulfills the promise that it made. And the promise that it made being Nicolas Cage playing Count Dracula, his relationship with Renfield, and how that has now changed over centuries, quite literally. And occasionally we do get a few scenes that explore that dynamic. My favorite scene in the whole film is one that doesn't even really involve any magic or anything of the macabre. It's when Dracula visits Renfield in his apartment and they just talk to each other.
Great scene.
It is hilarious, absolutely hilarious. But I feel like we get those very few and far between. This really does feel like a missed opportunity, like you're saying. I love Aquafina, and I don't know if the issues I have with her performance are due to her performance or due to the way that the character is constructed here. I don't think she's very good. I don't really think she has good chemistry with Nicholas Hoult, and I really like Nicholas Hoult for the most part here. At least I like the idea, even though what he's essentially given to do is more or less a Deadpool like voiceover narration is really what this comes around to. And if
Yeah.
that's what you're looking for, you might have fun with this. It has the same gratuitous violence as comedy that you expect from those R-rated superhero films like a Deadpool or a Kick-Ass. It's definitely more in that vein than it is sort of this situational fish out of water comedy starring Nicolas Cage as Dracula, like I feel like we were promised. And I do think Nicolas Cage is pretty good here. I think the problem is that he's just not here enough.
Yeah.
But there are also times when he is on screen where I felt like the aesthetics, the makeup, and everything were kind of doing a lot of the work for him. And there are a few moments in the first third, at least, where I thought, man, it almost feels like anyone could be playing Dracula right now. It's not until maybe the back half where I feel like Nicolas Cage really shows up as Nicolas Cage as Dracula, if that makes sense. And when he does that, I think he's very good. But more often than not, given the overall flow and structure of the film, I found myself forgetting that Nicolas Cage was even in it at times.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a problem. So if you're looking for something that does sort of carry that kick-ass like quality, then you're probably going to have a good time with that. But it sounds like you and I are in the same boat, Ryan, that we wanted to have fun during this movie. We know that this is meant to be a movie that you don't take seriously at all. It's just hard to do that when it doesn't live up to the promise that I feel like it was very aggressively making leading up to its release.
You mentioned, I think, one of the things that in the last like 48 hours since we were going to do this, that's kind of like hit the internet, and I want to push back on it a little bit. Not on you,
Yeah.
Brennan. Obviously,
No, just in general.
you're good. We're buddies. We're great friends. It's the really just dumb takes about the fact that, like, oh well, give it a pass because it's big dumb fun, or it's just dumb fun. And I'd like to counter that.
Yeah.
We live in a world now where, you know, dumb fun can also be elevated, and it can be something more than that.
Dumb fun can be good dumb fun.
I
And
would like
sometimes dumb
to
fun is just good dumb fun. It can be. It really can.
I would like to refer to just in the year of our Lord 2022, when a film with butt plugs and sausage fingers won Best Picture of the Year. I like to think back to the time of which that was last year around this time. What you can consider some sequences that are goofy, dumb fun had emotional resonance to them, had
Yeah.
levity brought to the conversation, were grounded at a certain point. This movie is not grounded at all. Like, the only scene that feels truly grounded, like you're mentioning, is in Renfield's apartment. But then in that moment, you have Dracula
Mm-hmm.
and Renfield, for Christ's sake. And this movie, it wants to have its cake and eat it too. It wants
Sure.
to be bombastic and have all these things going on, and it's such a busy freaking movie. There's too
It's
much
very
in
busy.
this.
Yeah, I agree. It's
This
very
is
uneven.
you've got Renfield and Dracula's origin story. Then you
Mhm.
have their dynamic as a relationship. You have Renfield and his psychosis. You have Renfield trying to go out on his own, his job, and having to sort of gather people for Dracula. That's a lot within itself. That's a movie within itself. Just
That
right there,
is.
tackling
Yeah.
that. That's literally what this movie's trying to do. But then you add in a crime family that owns the entire city of New Orleans, that is crooked with every cop. There's only one good cop in that entire city. They killed that person. His daughter's the only other good cop,
Mhm.
and she's basically on her own. And you have that going on. Then you have like kill orders on both of them. You have FBI investigations going on as well here. There is
Yeah.
so much plot in this 90-minute film that I sat there and I went,
Yeah.
who the hell greenlit this script? Because this is
Uh-huh.
just, it's like 7 movies in one, and particularly none of them are actually good enough to make this movie good. Because I would have loved
Yeah.
to see the Renfield and the Dracula movie that I was promised in all the marketing. That just never happens,
Yeah.
really.
I think you could have found a way to, even further prioritize the therapy session scenes here, maybe make that the framing device of
Mhm.
sorts, because the idea, and I keep mentioning this, the idea of Renfield and Dracula having this codependent relationship that becomes very abusive, essentially.
Yeah.
I mean, it now I say it that way, it sounds like it's meant to be taken a little bit seriously. It is not, but
Fascinating, though.
there is potential room to be a bit sarcastic, maybe even a little satirical with
Mhm.
that, but you could do those things without taking yourself seriously. And those sequences in the therapy session, some of the jokes are a little old fashioned, a little tired, like when they talk about ska music, for instance.
Man,
It,
that
like
is,
it,
like,
it,
the only joke that they have in this movie
it
for,
is.
like,
They
30 minutes.
it comes up at least a few times, and I feel like that's maybe one time too many. But I will admit, as tired and as dated as a joke like that might be, I kind of found it funny in execution, at least in the therapy session itself, and I felt
Mhm.
like there was potential to make that maybe more of a framing device, like I said. And there are sequences there, especially when Dracula himself, and it's in the trailer, when he is invited in and the dynamic he has with them here, there are some good bits of banter there. And I think it just further proves how much of a missed opportunity that it is when the whole FBI / corrupt police force subplot finds its way to really take over the movie.
It
It,
really
it
does.
kind of is the priority when you think about it. I mean, if you were to come out of this and say it felt like Aquafina was the star here, I don't know if I would necessarily push back on that. And maybe I'd be less critical if I felt like her character and her performance were more of a piece with what I think the film wants, and I just don't think it's quite there.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's a good couple of scenes of banter where, like, Renfield's comes in and interrupts this one girl in the group's, like, whole story, and that's kind of like a funny, I thought, one of the funnier jokes where, like, she just
Yeah.
can't get out her grief because,
Yeah.
like, and that happens in sessions like that
It
where, like,
does, yeah.
somebody like dominates that conversation, and it also shows that there's a deep underlying of narcissism and also
Mhm.
self-obsession, and how
Yep.
that's could also be explored too. And I just felt like, you're right, Brendan, the movie should have just been about what the first or 20 minutes suggest, that, like, Renfield's going to do this stuff for um he's going to do this stuff for Dracula. He's going to get him his feed, right? And he's going to have to
Yeah.
struggle with that. But then he's also going to kind of be like this vigilante, right? You don't need the
Mhm.
crime family at all in this. You just really need, like,
Yeah, you don't.
you can kind of just then have, like, Aquafina be just a normal detective. She's uncovering all these bodies that are, or missing persons cases, and then she sort of investigates Renfield. They come across, maybe that's the way you do it, because taking out the crime stuff, it's taking out a lot of forced comedy that doesn't need to be there, a lot of
Yeah.
forced violence that doesn't need to be there either. Again, I don't care if a movie's violent. It's just got to, like, have a point to it and also be different. Like, I love John Wick. That's one of my
Oh,
favorite movies
yeah.
this year.
Yeah.
John Wick Chapter 4, fantastic set pieces, really inventive with the action. Those movies are bloody as hell, bullets going to the head. We love it all. Okay. So it's not to say that I'm being some sort of prude when I'm talking about, like, this action is literally, like, there's a sequence where Nicholas Holt is using someone's arms as, like, nunchucks, essentially. And here's the thing, like, that should be kind of cheeky or kind of fun or it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And when I'm watching, I'm like, oh, okay, expected. It's all expected. And it shouldn't be. You should have an element of surprise to this. And I
Well,
was texting
yeah.
another critic, I was like, what if Lord and Miller had their chance to do this? It would be
Or,
so
or
much more elevated
or at least
than
someone
what
that
we
can
got.
at least someone that can upend the tropes. And I don't necessarily need to be surprised with a movie like this, but I need to at least find something sincere and charming about it. And this gets into, I guess, my definition of what I look for in quote unquote dumb fun, because we're talking about Dracula, and we sort of joked about the whole dark universe thing a few moments ago during this episode. Now, I know that The Mummy with Tom Cruise was meant to kickstart the dark universe, but in some ways that was yet another rebranding of another Mummy movie that many of us grew up with, the 1999 film with Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz. That there is dumb fun, and I think
Yeah.
that's great dumb fun. And it's because there's a genuine romanticism to that movie. And that's not what you necessarily always need in films like this, but I need to buy into some type of sincerity and not feel like I'm just looking at a product. And that's more or less what I felt here.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, like, this is just a movie that I don't know, even know saying it's checking off boxes, because I don't know what boxes it's supposed to be. Like, the entire marketing of this movie was Nicholas Cage and and Nick Holt
Yeah.
freaking going at it in modern times as Dracula and Renfield. And you're right, Brendan. By the time I was watching this, I was like, I understood. Unfortunately, I understood the ramifications and dynamics going on in Aquafina's life more than I felt with Renfield or Dracula. The
Yeah.
motives, and it's just, and that's the thing. It's like Dracula is a complex character. We've
Oh,
seen
for
it
sure.
in
Yeah.
dozens of iterations
Yep.
where that character is deeply complex. There is no complexity in this character for me. It's really just about, like, I want to destroy the world, which is like, okay, cool. I mean, like, on the page, that's nothing. I mean, Cage is kind of
Yeah.
good at giving it a his sinister sort of take on it.
Yeah,
But
for
by
sure.
the end, but by the third act, I mean, like, this movie's third act is just stupid. It is stupid, awful writing, acting, set pieces, all of it. It's just a garbage dumpster fire of a movie by the end.
Man.
And I
Yeah.
was like, I was sitting there going like, I pray to God there's not another one of these.
Well,
You know?
I don't know if I would go as far as to call it a dumpster fire, because I feel like that would actually suggest the movie had more personality than it does. I feel like it's almost worse to say that the film is a missed opportunity, like we're talking about. Those are things I tend to like even less than quote unquote dumpster fires like you're talking about. But I will say the final act is not great, but not in the ways that make it memorable. And I feel like we would at least agree with that. Before we get
Yeah.
to final thoughts, what did you think about Ben Schwartz in this movie?
Okay. I like Ben Schwartz as a personality.
Yeah.
Okay. Like dude is a funny dude. He does like a lot of improv stuff, and
Yeah.
it's really, he's mostly known for being John Ralphio on Parks and Recreations, if you've ever seen that television show.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's his claim to fame. He's atrocious in this movie. He is like, he's the kind of humor that doesn't belong here. It's like what you would expect from one of those like direct to video 90s comedies that you would get, or sequel comedies.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're not really, I just was like, I don't think this is working at all for me. And I like the guy. It's never a bad thing to see him. I'm glad he's got a job. I'm glad he got a paycheck. But I was sitting there going like, man, like, no. Or maybe he should have played Dracula, because he looked kind
I don't
of
know.
tall and lanky. You know what I mean?
I have to wonder, is the negative reception that you and I both have to him here because that he's actually not good in the movie, or that it's the type of performance that shouldn't be in this specific movie? Because I found, well, see, that's the thing, because there are moments when I found myself kind of amused by what he was doing here. There are a few moments early on when he's introduced involving a bunch of bricks of cocaine, I'll simply say. I thought I thought that was really funny, and I felt
But
like
Brendan,
Hey, go ahead.
but Brendan also too, if you saw a video of me throwing a bricks of cocaine at a bunch of police officers in the middle of the road while I'm driving a car, you'd probably laugh at that too. It's a funny kind of like
Yeah,
little
but
gag.
you're also less funny than Ben Schwartz. No offense.
That's not true.
I guess that's debatable. But all that to say, I like a few things he's doing here. I think my issue is I just wish that was saved for maybe a different movie or something. And I think I would
just
have
felt there
enjoyed
was
it
a lot
more.
of one note in the
I mean, it is. It's not.
performance, you know.
I don't think it's one note in a bad way. I just think it's one note in the wrong movie. If that makes
Yes,
sense.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like this energy does not belong here, sir. Like
Yeah.
it's the wrong kind of like. It's just there's so many different like kind of vibes of comedy going on. So it's
Yeah.
weird to really, I don't know. Nobody's gonna remember this movie in 6 months.
That's the sad thing. I will say this about Ben Schwartz. He at least shares my birthday, so I have to give him some love there. So, okay, he gives a great performance all of a sudden. I just found that out. I'm literally looking at his IMDb page right now. I was like, oh, he's born on September.
Put it on the
15th.
poster. He's great in Renfield.
Oh, yeah, 2 Virgos. I think we should go out and grab a beer or something. Any other final thoughts here as we close out this conversation on Renfield?
I did like the production design concept of this like abandoned hospital with the blood bags as like where Dracula's throne was. Thought that was pretty cool. Thought Cage's kind of costume was cool.
There's some decent stuff going on here from a production and I guess costume design standpoint that it sounds like we're really like negative on this movie, and I'm certainly more negative than I am positive, but it's not going to be one of my worst movies of the year. It's just going to be the one I probably forget the most, which is
I'm gonna be like, oh, we watched that.
worse.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it might be one of those. It almost sits into the same vein as something like Cocaine Bear for me, but I think Cocaine Bear is way worse.
That movie's bad. I like Nicholas Holt's sweater as Renfield, where he goes to.
Oh yeah, I want to. Where did he get that?
Gap?
From Gap? He got that from Gap.
Like the Gap.
Yeah,
Looks pretty. It probably wasn't the Gap. It was probably like Louis Vuitton or something. That's like $7,000 or whatever.
I
but
doubt
like,
that.
But they use the Gap as a joke. I don't know. I wish he spent more time in the therapy sessions. I thought that those were the highlight. There's a reason why they put all that Brendan in the trailer, I think.
Yeah.
Because those are the best scenes, really. And it's a lot of those scenes there too.
And I'm trying to recall the actor who plays the Mark, Brandon Scott Jones, his name is. I think he's very good in the movie too. He's got a few lines of dialogue that I think are really well timed comedically.
Yeah, he's got the right pace to be in this movie for sure. And I think he's the second best thing outside of Cage. And I really wish he was. I really just wish they were there more. I wish most of the film was just kind of centered there. The chaos is the third act, like Dracula coming to the meeting, and then it's like it's more closed in than you would kind of think. I wish it was more like that. It just gets too broad for its britches, and that's unfortunate. But that being said, Cage is still really great here. It's kind of hard for him right now to give a bad performance unless he's really trying. But overall,
the more he tries, the worse he is, and the better the more fun he is to watch, I should say. He never gives an uninteresting performance.
There's always something to chew on that steak.
Yes.
But yeah,
Absolutely.
Renfield is a movie. It exists only for a little while until I take the neuralizer from Men in Black, and then I just forget about it.
I think you already have. I think the movie itself is its own neuralizer.
Wait, what are we doing here?
I will say this. There is one thing I'm definitely going to remember about this movie, and it's one of those like bits of criteria I sometimes have for movies that are meant to be fun like this, but I wish maybe had a little bit more style. When the end credits are perhaps the most stylish thing about the movie, I don't think that's usually a good thing. And I feel like that's
such a waste.
It really is. I wanted to like this one a lot more than I did. There was so much promise in the gimmick and the overall concept, and I just don't think it lives up to that promise. I think it takes the easy way out and kind of acts more cowardice, if I'm being honest. So, needless to say, it's hard to say we don't recommend this movie because I think there are going to be some people that do enjoy it, especially like I said earlier. If you're looking for something that evokes more of those Deadpool-like, irreverent action, horror, thriller type movies, then I think you're going to enjoy this and maybe find yourself more interested in that than the mere gimmick of the movie. But if you're more interested in the gimmick and the concept, you might be disappointed with this one. If you want to see some more thoughts from us on Renfield, you can go to our Letterboxd page at letterboxd.com/InSessionFilm. JD Duran will have some thoughts there, as I know he has seen the film. He's slightly higher on the film than we are. He actually had a pretty good time with it, so you want to definitely go and check out some of his thoughts to hear some different takes on the film. And if you want to see a full review of the film, you can also check that out at InSessionFilm.com, where we have a very exciting, newly branded website. So if you want to see the new digs, how beautiful that this thing looks, major thanks to Kevin Brackett for his help getting that all put together. We really do appreciate it. It looks
thank
beautiful.
you. Thank you, Kevin. I mean, a website that looks so beautiful, way better terms of quality of beauty, that website, than Renfield. And it's
it
Again,
certainly evokes more style.
Yes.
I definitely want to sink my teeth into this website a little bit more.
Oh, yeah. I can't wait to just get behind the wheels of this bad boy.
One more for the road. Anyway, thanks for listening, everyone. For a few ending plugs here, if you haven't already, be sure to check out episode 530, where myself, Ryan, and Jay Ledbetter had a very long conversation talking about one Russell Crowe. As far as a few other reviews we have planned coming up pretty soon, myself and JD Duran are slated to do a review of the new film from Makoto Shinkai, Suzume, I believe it's called. I think that's the pronunciation. Suzume, something along those lines. I want to make sure I'm giving credit where credit is due, but I'm looking forward to that one.
Suzume is the...
Suzume.
Yeah,
okay. Just want to make sure I'm getting it right, but we will have a full review of that coming out, as well as quite a few movies coming out this coming weekend, because it's going to be a pretty busy one. Beau is Afraid, the new Ari Aster film, Evil Dead Rise. Apparently, we're going to be seeing the new Kelly Reichardt film showing up. It's going to be trickling out into some theaters soon, and I think we're all going to be getting it this coming weekend. So be on the lookout for reviews for all of those. It's going to be a very exciting weekend at the movies. Any final thoughts on anything as we close out this conversation, Ryan?
Yeah, all those movies we just mentioned, go see those. Renfield, you can wait till VOD or Peacock.
I think we have some more important ones to talk about. Thanks for listening.
TV.
Or TV. Yeah, I've been watching more TV as well. I made that promise, almost like a New Year's resolution, to watch a little bit more television in 2023. I just finished the first season of Shrinking, and I thought that was quite good. I think I mentioned to you offline, but I'm rewatching Breaking Bad because my fiance hasn't seen it yet. So it's a nice excuse to rewatch that one, especially since I haven't even finished Better Call Saul yet. I still have the final season there. So it's a nice excuse to work my way back into that if she's willing to watch that with me. So a lot of television here. I'm feeling behind on movies now, so I feel like I have even more work to do.
No, man, you gotta be able to find that's the beauty of being caught up on some of these. It's like you can watch them, week to week. It's only an hour, like I do on when we're done. Just a little behind the scenes, real quick. When we're done with In Session Film, Ryan goes over to the couch and watches an hour of Succession and goes to bed at like 12:30 at night. Because
there you go.
Daddy's got to get his fix. But also, the new season of Barry's out. I watched 7 of the first 8 episodes, and it's incredible.
That's on my list. I'm going to be watching that sometime this year as well. You've been building it up so much, Ryan. I feel like all it can do is disappoint me. I really hope
it's Jay's fault. Jay got me into it, and Jay was like, "You will love this," and I love it. I think it's great. I just need to see the ending to solidify its greatness, and that's really it. But yeah, a lot of good shows. Go out and watch stuff.
Yeah, watch stuff and have a lot of fun. Thanks for listening, everyone, for this review of Renfield. Hopefully you enjoyed what we had to say about it. We will see you all next time on the In Session Film Podcast. Blah, 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 blah.